So I'm hoping that you'll be excited about how quickly we're going to finish knocking this thing out. So in the world of model view controller, we've got our view done. We've got everything set up that the user sees. We've got a couple of the hooks done to the controller, but not all of them. We've got the model done. And so the piece that we need is the glue between the two, right? So we need to have, when somebody presses the view, we need to inform the model. And then when the model changes, like when we say, hey, something just happened, we need to take that information and plug it back into the view. So there's kind of the two data paths. So let's just go ahead and see what we're up to. So yeah, so the big thing is we need to be able to, when a button is clicked, to tell the model, and then we're going to use that model to update the label up here, and then to also update the X's and O's that are on here. And then new game, we'll have to tell the model, hey, make a new game. Cool, and by the way, right now we don't have any of those things done because clicking just doesn't do anything. Let's go write some code. So the first thing we need to do is we need to connect to some things in our view that are going to change. So for example, we have a text view for the game state text view. And then we also have some buttons, right? So the buttons we could do a couple of different ways. We could make 9 buttons and call them like button 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We could make an array list of buttons, or we could make a plain old array of buttons. And really all those solutions would work. But the one I'm going to pick is I'm going to pick an array of buttons. So in Java you can use an array list, or you can use a plain old array. I'm going to use a plain old array. It's just how I choose to do it. So now we've got to connect to these things. So the game state text view, you've got to say find view by ID. And if you remember what it is, great. But if not, you could always go look in the XML. But I believe that I called mine game state text view. If you give them good names, autocomplete will be your friend. Next thing we need to do is we need to actually make that array of buttons. And so I've got to remember the syntax on this. In Java, you say new button, and then you say how many there are. There's 9 of them, but we've actually got that constant over in the game class if you want to use that. So we're going to say, hey, make us a new array with 9 spots available. Now for each of those spots, this part's going to be a little tedious. Find view by ID, r.id .button 0. So whenever I do something tedious, what I like to do is I like to copy paste. So I take out the part that's going to be different about each one. And then I'm just going to, so that is going to be my number 1. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oops, but I only needed 8 because it actually goes 0 to 8. And then I'll just kind of put all these in. If I type faster than you, just pause the video and, and you'll get it done, right? Cool, there I got mine finished up. There are fancy ways to do that, but they're really not worth it. The copy paste is just boom, done. All right, no big deal. All right, now the next thing we need to do is we need to, so now I've got those connections made to our view. We need to, when a square is pressed, we need to inform the game model object. And if you recall, we've actually already made the game model object. We created it as new right here. And we just need to tell it when something gets pressed. So we'll say, hey, mgame, and he's got a number of methods on him. He's got press button at index. That's where we're going to tell him who got pressed. And then the other 2 are for whenever he updates the view. So we're going to say, hey, press button at index, tag as int. So we had prepared that earlier as an int, so now we just pass it through there. You could play the game now, you just wouldn't see anything, which would be kind of ridiculous. And what I like to do is I like to make a function called update view. Update view doesn't exist yet as a function. You could of course type it. Being very lazy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this light bulb to help me out. If you click on this light bulb, it'll say, hey, would you like to create the method update view? I would. By the way, if the light bulb doesn't show up for you, so like for me, if I just kind of like put my cursor in there, I get this light bulb show up. If it doesn't show up, you can always just hit Alt-Enter, which is essentially like forces the light bulb actions. So I'm going to say create method update view. It is assuming it's private, but it's asking me, hey, do you want to return void? Yes, I do, so I'm just going to hit enter. And what update view is going to do is it's going to do things like it's going to take that game state text view and it's going to set the text to whatever the game tells it to set it to, right? So we've got this string for game state. Just for giggles, I'm going to run it right now. And what should happen is as I press things, the buttons won't have X's and O's on them because we haven't written that yet, right? So that's like, to do, put an X or an O on each button. But the game will actually play and the string at the top will change. So I just kind of like to see what we're doing here. So mine's loading up. So if I say X right there, note the view didn't show the X, but the model's got it, and the model has an O there. So I'm going to put an O here. So you have to be like really good at remembering. So I'm going to put an X there, so there's X there, and then an O up here. And then if I put an X down here, it'll say X wins. So X has now won the game. And you can see that if you really understand model view controller, you can understand that we've done kind of like half of it. So it's just kind of neat to see that. I guess we should be able to make a new game as well. I can add that really quickly. So to make a new game, you just say mgame equals new tic-tac-toe game. And you have to pass in the context, which is this. And then you would say update view here as well. So this is why you can kind of see that I made a helper method, because I'm going to call update view when you press a square, and I call update view when you press new game. It's also pretty common to call update view when things first load. It turns out that this one is unnecessary because we, in our XML, made the view all set for the initial state. But in general, you want to update the view when the game launches. You want to update the view when a square is pressed. You want to update the view when there's a new game. So I could play it again and new game would work. But let's just go ahead and finish this app. There's like 3 lines of code left in this app. So what we want to do is we want to loop over all of our buttons. So just say for int I equals 0, I less than, tic-tac-toe game num squares, I plus plus. So depending on how much coding you've done, making little for loops probably is pretty comfortable for you. So m buttons at location I. So this is for each button in the array. We're going to set its text, which is kind of neat. And we're going to set its text to whatever the game tells us to set it to. So we've got a method in here, string for button. So what is the string for the button at this index? And the index is I. So the thing that's neat about this is you're done. You just finished this app. We just need to make sure it works. But we're going to go through all 9 buttons, and we're just going to ask, hey model, what's the string here? Hey model, what's the string here? Hey model, what's the string here? There is potentially an inefficiency because you're always checking all 9 when maybe they didn't change. But man, that's not really an inefficiency because it's going to finish in nanoseconds anyway. So this thing should now work. Cross your fingers, knock on wood. Put an X there. Hey, put an O there. Put an X there. Block them just for fun. Put an X there. I'm headed for a tie, I think. See if I can still get a win out of this. On the very last one, X wins. Fantastic. That all worked great. New game. You could test other scenarios, but to be honest, the model object should hopefully be fine. So X won there and it stopped. Just as a heads up, if you were to rotate your device, it does kind of look disastrous. Not sure if I can get mine to rotate here. Doesn't want to rotate, no big deal. But that's a feature, not a bug. Cool, let's go ahead and get this thing checked in. So this is the controller code for tic-tac-toe. You can commit that to master, and then it's off the screen here, so I'm just going to say push. So hopefully you get an idea for how model view controller works. You do have to submit this code to show that you've been able to finish the follow along. You can submit it in 1 or 2 ways. You can make a video recording, which is actually not hard at all. I've been encouraging the program Screencastify. If people want to use that, you can record your screen, and then what you do is you put that up into Google Drive. And then you send me the link to Google Drive, make sure it's publicly visible, right? And if you're comfortable with Google Drive, setting the visibility is actually quite doable. Great. Come back next time and we will talk about the lab. The lab for this one is called Linear Lights Out. We'll talk about it then.